How does this peace deal feed into the protests we've seen over recent months?
Well, first, I think it's really important to address that as Palestine solidarity activists, we of course want to allow this time for Palestinians to breathe and celebrate what we hope is more than just a pause in the constant bombardment and military violence that Palestinians have been subjected to by the Israeli military for the past 2 years, but that as members of the international community, as solidarity activists, it is our duty to continue to urge our politicians and our governments to not only acknowledge their own complicity, but to address the utter lack of accountability from and for Israeli leaders. It's important to emphasise that we will continue to protest and we will remain on the streets until there is uninhibited entry of aid into Gaza. We will remain on the streets until we win an arms embargo and sanctions on Israel, and we will remain on the streets until there is a complete end to the occupation and until Palestinians have total liberation of their land.
You'll have watched today's peace summit in Egypt closely. There was very little talk about accountability. There was very little talk about, well, there was a lot of talk about rebuild. It's almost as if they've moved on to this next phase with very little sort of self-determination by the Palestinian people. You know, we're talking about a governing body coming in made up of other world leaders and officials. Is that something you want to see talked about more?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's imperative that we address that Trump's plan not only fails to afford Palestinians the right to govern themselves, but that it ignores the much larger issues of Israel's colonial project, of the displacement caused during the Nakba, and of, you know, how we are going to move on from this situation, highlighting the fact that the reality is that hundreds of thousands of Palestinians have been martyred in the past 2 years and countless in the decades before. You know, these are the things that we want to see addressed and talked about. Every single sign of Palestinian culture and social life has been systematically annihilated by Israel in the past 2 years. Schools, hospitals, universities, yes, we have to talk about rebuilding. And again, that is one thing that isn't being spoken about enough. But we need to understand that these are all issues, part of a much larger project and scheme of settler colonialism.